The courtroom doors swing open with a confidence that immediately draws attention. She walks in like she owns the place, designer heels clicking against the worn tile floor of Providence Municipal Court, a Chanel handbag dangling from the crook of her arm, oversized sunglasses perched perfectly on her head despite being indoors. Her name is Victoria Ashford, and everything about her entrance says she doesn't belong here, not in this modest courtroom where most defendants arrive in their work clothes, clutching crumpled tickets and worn wallets. Judge Frank Caprio looks up from the case file on his bench, his reading glasses resting on the bridge of his nose. His expression is neutral, professional, but there's something in his eyes, a flicker of curiosity mixed with caution. He's seen thousands of people walk through these doors over his decades on the bench, people from every walk of life, every economic status, every story imaginable. But something about this woman's demeanor already sets this case apart. The clerk announces the case. Victoria Ashford versus the City of Providence. Multiple parking violations, Your Honor. Accumulation of unpaid tickets over 6 months. Victoria steps up to the podium without hesitation, without the nervousness that usually accompanies defendants in this space. She doesn't clutch the podium for support. She doesn't shift her weight anxiously. Instead, she stands there with her shoulders back, chin slightly raised, as if she's about to address a board meeting rather than a judge who holds the power to significantly impact her day. Judge Caprio removes his glasses slowly, folding them with deliberate care before setting them down. He looks at her with those warm, penetrating eyes that have become famous across the internet, eyes that see past facades and straight into the truth of people's circumstances. "Good morning, Ms. Ashford," he says, his voice carrying that distinctive Rhode Island accent softened by years of compassionate listening. "Good morning, Your Honor," she responds, her tone crisp and businesslike. The judge glances down at the file, and even from the gallery, observers can see his eyebrows raise slightly. "I'm looking at quite a collection here," he says, his fingers trailing down the list. 15 parking tickets. 15. All in downtown Providence. All unpaid. He looks up at her. That's quite a lot, Miss Ashford. What happened here?" There it is, his signature opening, gentle and inviting, creating space for explanation rather than immediately passing judgment. It's the question that has opened countless viral moments, countless stories of redemption and understanding. But Victoria Ashford doesn't soften at the invitation. "Your Honor, with all due respect, those tickets are completely unjustified," she says, and there's an edge in her voice that makes the courtroom collectively hold its breath. "I park in that area every day for work. I have a parking pass for the garage, but sometimes when I'm running late I park on the street. The meters are impossible to understand, the signage is confusing, and quite frankly, the parking enforcement in this city is nothing more than a revenue scheme." The courtroom goes quiet. People don't talk to Judge Caprio like this. Not because he demands deference through intimidation, but because his warmth and humanity naturally invite respect. But Victoria Ashford seems immune to that pull, or perhaps she's chosen to ignore it. Judge Caprio leans back in his chair, and those who know him well can recognize the subtle shift in his posture. He's not angry, that's not his way, but there's a sharpness to his attention now, a focus that suggests he's reading far more than just her words. "I see," he says quietly. "A revenue scheme. Talk to me about that. Help me understand your thinking." Victoria shifts her weight, and for the first time, there's a crack in her composure, just the slightest hint of irritation breaking through. "Your Honor, I'm a successful businesswoman. I run 3 boutique clothing stores in the Providence area. I employ 23 people. I pay more in taxes every quarter than most people in this courtroom make in a year." She gestures vaguely toward the gallery, not looking at anyone in particular. "I don't have time to feed meters every 2 hours or decipher contradictory parking signs. These tickets are an inconvenience, not a reflection of any real wrongdoing." The way she says most people in this courtroom hangs in the air like smoke, and Judge Caprio's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes does. He's heard dismissiveness before, he's encountered arrogance, but there's something about this particular brand of entitlement that seems to strike a different chord. This is his city, these are his people sitting in this gallery, and the casual dismissal of their worth doesn't sit well with him. I see, he says again, and now there's a quietness to his voice that suggests something deeper is stirring beneath his legendary patience. So you're saying that because you're busy, because you're successful, the parking rules that apply to everyone else in Providence shouldn't apply to you? Is that what you're telling me? Victoria hesitates, perhaps sensing for the first time that her approach isn't landing the way she intended. I'm saying that I'm a contributor to this city's economy. I deserve some consideration for the value I bring. Judge Caprio nods slowly, his fingers steepled in front of him. You deserve consideration, he repeats, and there's something in the way he says it that makes it clear he's not agreeing, but rather examining the statement like a specimen under glass. Miss Ashford, in all my years on this bench, I've heard a lot of reasons why people don't pay their parking tickets. I've heard about medical emergencies, family crises, financial hardships that would break your heart. But I have to tell you, this is the first time someone has stood before me and argued that they shouldn't have to follow the rules because they're too successful to be bothered. The courtroom is absolutely silent now. Victoria's face flushes slightly, a pink tinge creeping up her neck. That's not what I said. Then help me understand what you did say, Judge Caprio responds, and there's no hostility in his voice, only that persistent gentleness that somehow makes the moment even more powerful. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you believe your time is more valuable than other people's time, your convenience more important than other people's need to park, your contribution to the city more significant than the contributions of all those people you just dismissed. Victoria opens her mouth to respond, but Judge Caprio isn't finished. He leans forward slightly, and the entire courtroom leans with him, drawn by the quiet intensity of the moment. Let me tell you something about this city, Miss Ashford. Providence is built on the backs of working people. People who get up before dawn to open their small businesses. People who work 2 jobs to support their families. People who scrape together quarters to feed those meters you find so beneath your notice. And you know what? Every single one of them has to follow the same parking rules you do, no matter how busy they are, no matter how much they contribute. The weight of his words settles over the courtroom like a blanket, and for the first time since she walked in, Victoria Ashford looks genuinely uncertain, her armor of confidence showing its first real cracks. Judge Caprio lets the silence hold for a moment, giving his words time to land. Then, in that characteristic way of his tone softens just slightly, creating space for something other than confrontation. Tell me about these stores of yours, he says, and the question catches Victoria off guard. She had been bracing for more judgment, more criticism, and the sudden shift to curiosity disarms her. They're boutique clothing stores, she says, her voice less certain now. High-end women's fashion. The main location is on Westminster Street, and I have 2 other locations in the East Side and Federal Hill. How long have you been in business? Judge Caprio asks, and he seems genuinely interested, as if they're just having a conversation rather than a contentious hearing. 12 years, Victoria answers, and there's a hint of pride breaking through despite herself. I started with nothing but a small loan and a vision. Built it from the ground up. That's impressive, the judge says, and he means it. His respect for hard work and entrepreneurship is genuine, part of his fundamental belief in the American dream that his own immigrant parents embodied. Starting a business is never easy. Takes courage, takes sacrifice. Your parents must be proud. The question seems innocent enough, but something shifts in Victoria's expression. Just for a second, her composure wavers, and Judge Caprio, who has spent a lifetime reading faces and hearing the stories behind them, catches it immediately. He doesn't push, not yet. He just waits, creating that space he's so famous for, that gentle silence that invites truth. My father passed away 3 years ago, Victoria says finally, her voice a little tighter. He never really understood what I was trying to build. Thought I should have gone into something more practical, like accounting or law. My mother. She pauses, and Judge Caprio notices the way her hand tightens around her handbag. My mother has Alzheimer's. She's in a care facility in Cranston. I'm sorry to hear that, Judge Caprio says, and the sympathy in his voice is so genuine that it seems to catch Victoria off guard again. Alzheimer's is a cruel disease. How often do you get to see her? Every Sunday, Victoria answers, and for the first time, there's something vulnerable in her admission. Sometimes during the week if I can manage it. But she doesn't always remember me anymore. Some days she thinks I'm her sister. Some days she doesn't know who I am at all. The courtroom has shifted now, the energy changing from confrontational to something more complex, more human. Judge Caprio nods slowly, his expression thoughtful. That must be very difficult, he says. Not just emotionally, but practically too. Care facilities, especially good ones, they're expensive. Victoria's jaw tightens, and she looks away for a moment, as if the judge has touched something she wasn't prepared to expose. Yes, she says simply. And your stores, Judge Caprio continues, his voice still gentle but probing deeper now, how are they doing? In this economy, retail is tough. Especially independent retail. The big chains, the online shopping, it's not easy to compete. We're managing, Victoria says, but there's something hollow in the statement, something that doesn't quite ring true. Judge Caprio tilts his head slightly, that characteristic gesture of his that signals he's heard the words but he's listening for what lies beneath them. Managing, he repeats. Miss Ashford, I've been around business people my whole life. My father worked in produce, up at 4 a.m. every day of his life. I know what managing sounds like, and I know what struggling sounds like. Which one are you? Victoria's composure finally cracks in earnest. Her shoulders sag slightly, and when she looks up at Judge Caprio, there's a weariness in her eyes that wasn't there before. The main store is doing okay, she admits. But the other two? The East Side location has been losing money for 8 months. Federal Hill is barely breaking even. Online retail has killed us. People come in, try things on, then go home and order the same items for 20% less on Amazon. I've had to cut staff. I've had to dip into my personal savings just to make rent on the storefronts. The judge listens without interrupting, and his expression has transformed from that initial wariness to something that looks like understanding mixed with concern. And yet you're still operating all 3 stores, he observes. Why? If 2 of them are losing money, why keep them open? Victoria's eyes glisten slightly, and she blinks rapidly, as if angry at herself for showing emotion. Because if I close them, 23 people lose their jobs. 23 people who depend on me. Some of them have been with me since the beginning. Maria, my assistant manager, she's a single mother with 2 kids. Robert has been my stock manager for 9 years. He's putting his daughter through community college. How do I look them in the eye and tell them I'm closing down because I can't compete with corporations that don't care about people, only profit? The courtroom is completely absorbed now. This is what Judge Caprio does. What makes his courtroom so different from any other? He doesn't just adjudicate cases, he excavates the humanity beneath them. Every person who stands before him becomes a story, and every story matters. So you're keeping losing businesses open to protect your employees, Judge Caprio says, and there's no judgment in it, only a kind of wondering respect. That's noble, Miss Ashford. It's also financially devastating, I imagine. I'll figure it out, Victoria says, but her voice lacks conviction. I always do. I didn't build 3 stores from nothing by giving up when things got hard. No, Judge Caprio agrees. You didn't. But let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. When was the last time you took a salary from your business? Victoria's silence is answer enough. She looks down at her expensive handbag, her designer shoes, and there's a bitter irony in the moment, all the trappings of success masking a financial reality that's far more precarious than anyone would guess from looking at her. For months, she finally admits. I haven't paid myself in 4 months. Every dollar that comes and goes to payroll, rent, inventory, my mother's care facility. The bills for her care alone are $6,000 a month, and Medicare only covers a portion of it. I've been living off credit cards and the equity line on my house. Judge Caprio sits back in his chair, and the courtroom can feel the shift in his understanding. The woman who walked in projecting such arrogance and entitlement is revealing herself to be someone struggling under a weight that would crush most people, someone who has been keeping up appearances while slowly drowning, someone whose dismissive attitude toward parking tickets wasn't about privilege but about a woman at the end of her rope trying to maintain control of a life that's spinning out of her grasp. And these parking tickets, the judge says quietly, 15 of them over 6 months, all unpaid. You weren't ignoring them because you thought you were above the law. You were ignoring them because you literally couldn't afford to pay them. Victoria's eyes fill with tears that she refuses to let fall. I kept meaning to pay them. Every week I'd tell myself, next week when the revenue is better, next week when I have some breathing room. But next week never came. And they kept piling up, and the late fees kept adding on, and every time I saw another one on my windshield, I just felt like such a failure. Like I'd worked so hard to build something, to be someone, and I couldn't even afford to park my car legally in the city where I pay business taxes and employ people and contribute to the economy. Her voice breaks on the last words. You want to know the truth, Your Honor? I came in here acting like those tickets didn't matter because it was easier than admitting that they do matter, that they're just one more bill I can't pay, one more thing I've failed at. Judge Caprio removes his glasses and sets them down on the bench with careful deliberation. For a long moment, he simply looks at Victoria Ashford, and in that gaze is everything that has made him a beloved figure far beyond the boundaries of Providence, Rhode Island. He's not looking at a wealthy woman who was rude to his court. He's looking at a human being in crisis, someone who walked in wearing armor because she didn't know how else to protect herself from crumbling completely. Miss Ashford, he says, and his voice has that particular quality it gets in his most profound moments, a gentleness that somehow contains both strength and compassion. I need to say something to you, and I need you to really hear me. Are you listening? Victoria nods, unable to speak, her hands gripping the podium now not out of confidence but to keep herself steady. When you walked in here today, Judge Caprio continues, you came in swinging. You were dismissive of this court, dismissive of the city's parking enforcement, dismissive of the people in this room. And I'll be honest with you, it bothered me. It bothered me because I've dedicated my life to justice, to treating every person who comes before me with dignity regardless of who they are or what they have. Rich or poor, educated or not, citizen or immigrant, everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves to be heard. And when you walked in here acting like you were better than all of that, like the rules didn't apply to you because of your success, it struck a nerve. Victoria's face is flushed now, tears streaming down her cheeks despite her best efforts to contain them. I'm sorry, she whispers. Judge Caprio raises a hand gently. Let me finish. Because here's what I've learned in all my years doing this work: people rarely show us their worst selves unless they're protecting their most vulnerable selves. That armor you wore in here, that attitude, that wasn't the real you. That was a woman who's been holding everything together for so long that she doesn't know how to ask for help, doesn't know how to show weakness, doesn't know how to admit that she's hurting. He pauses, letting his words settle, and the courtroom is so quiet that people are barely breathing. You know what I see when I look at you now? I see a daughter who visits her mother every Sunday even though her mother doesn't remember her. I see a business owner who's going without a salary to protect her employees. I see someone who's paying $6,000 a month for her mother's care while her own businesses are failing. I see someone who's been carrying a burden that would break most people, and you've been carrying it alone, haven't you? Victoria can only nod, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs now. The designer handbag has slipped from her arm to the floor, forgotten. The sunglasses on her head are askew. All the carefully constructed appearance of success and control has dissolved, leaving only the raw truth of a woman at her breaking point. "Talk to me about your mother," Judge Caprio says gently. "What was she like before the Alzheimer's?" Victoria takes a shuddering breath, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. She was everything. After my father died, she was the only one who believed in my stores. She used to come in every day, help me arrange displays, talk to customers. She had this way of making everyone feel special, feel seen. She was my best friend." Victoria's voice breaks. "And now she looks at me like I'm a stranger. Last Sunday, when I visited, she got agitated because she didn't recognize me. She kept asking the nurses to remove that woman from her room. That woman. I'm her daughter, and she wanted me removed." Judge Caprio's eyes are glistening now too. He's a father himself, a grandfather, and the thought of a child being forgotten by their parent strikes something deep within him. "I'm so sorry," he says, and the profound sincerity in those 3 words seems to give Victoria permission to fully break down. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this," she admits through her tears. "The stores are failing. I'm drowning in debt. Every day I wake up and put on these expensive clothes and these shoes and I pretend like everything's fine, like I'm still the successful businesswoman everyone thinks I am. But I'm not. I'm barely holding on. And those parking tickets," she gestures toward the file on Judge Caprio's bench, "they're not even in the top 10 things I'm worried about, which is insane, right? I'm standing in court, I could end up with a judgment against me, and part of me almost doesn't care because at least it would be one decision I don't have to make, one thing I don't have to fix." Judge Caprio leans forward, his expression a mixture of concern and something that looks almost like admiration. "Miss Ashford, can I ask you something? When was the last time someone helped you? Not your employees, not your mother before she got sick, not your business associates. When was the last time someone just helped you?" Victoria looks genuinely confused by the question, as if she has to search her memory for an answer and is coming up empty. I don't know. I'm the one who helps people. I'm the one who's supposed to have it together." "Says who?" Judge Caprio asks, and there's a hint of that gentle challenge in his voice that his regular viewers would recognize. "Who made that rule? Because I'll tell you something, nobody can do it alone. Nobody. And the strongest people I know are the ones who understand when to ask for help, when to admit they're struggling, when to let someone else carry part of the weight." "I don't know how to do that," Victoria admits, and it's such a raw, honest confession that several people in the gallery are wiping their own eyes now. Judge Caprio nods slowly. "I understand. Believe me, I understand. But here's what's going to happen today. We're going to start by addressing these parking tickets, but we're not going to stop there. Because Ms. Ashford, you didn't just come to court today to face parking violations. You came here because somewhere deep down, you needed someone to see you. Really see you. Not the successful businesswoman, not the dutiful daughter, not the responsible employer. You needed someone to see Victoria, the person underneath all those roles, the person who's been carrying too much for too long." Victoria looks up at him, and in her eyes is a mixture of hope and fear, as if she's terrified to believe that someone might actually understand, might actually care. "What do I do?" she asks, and it's not about the tickets anymore, it's about everything, about her whole life that feels like it's falling apart despite her best efforts to hold it together. "First," Judge Caprio says, "we're going to take care of these tickets in a way that's fair but also takes into account your circumstances. Then we're going to talk about resources. Because you're not the first person to struggle with a parent in memory care, and you're not the first small business owner to face financial challenges. There are resources, there are people who can help. But you have to be willing to accept that help. You have to be willing to let people in." Judge Caprio picks up the file containing Victoria's parking violations and studies it for a moment, his expression thoughtful. The courtroom waits, the tension thick despite the emotional breakthrough that's just occurred. Everyone knows that regardless of Victoria's circumstances, there are still 15 unpaid tickets to address, still consequences that might need to be faced. Ms. Ashford, the judge begins, these 15 tickets, with the accumulated late fees, they come to $2,350. That's a significant amount of money. Under normal circumstances, I would look at this as a clear case of someone repeatedly violating parking ordinances and failing to take responsibility. The law is the law, and it applies equally to everyone. Victoria nods, her face pale, clearly bracing herself for the judgment she knows she probably deserves. But then Judge Caprio does something unexpected. He sets the file down and looks directly at her. But I want to tell you a story. When I first became a judge, this was many years ago, I thought my job was to enforce the law, period. Black and white, right and wrong, guilty or not guilty. And then one day, a man came before me. He'd been caught shoplifting formula for his baby. He had no money, no job, no way to feed his child. And technically, he was guilty. He'd broken the law. But was justice really served by punishing a desperate father for trying to feed his child? Or was there a bigger picture I needed to see? He pauses, letting the story settle. That case changed how I saw my role in this courtroom. Yes, I'm here to enforce the law. But I'm also here to serve justice, and justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about understanding. Sometimes it's about mercy. Sometimes it's about recognizing that the person standing before me isn't defined by their worst moment or their biggest mistake. Victoria's eyes are fixed on him, barely breathing, and the judge continues. When you walked in here today, I saw entitlement. I saw someone who I thought believed they were above the law. But what I was really seeing was someone in crisis, someone who'd been using anger and defensiveness to mask fear and desperation. And I've got to tell you, Ms. Ashford, I'm glad we got past that exterior. Because now I can see who you really are. He looks down at the file again. These tickets. Normally I'd say you need to pay them, maybe set up a payment plan. But here's what troubles me: you're already drowning in debt. You're already sacrificing your own financial security to care for your mother and protect your employees. Adding another $2,000 to that burden doesn't serve justice. It just punishes someone who's already being punished by life circumstances that are beyond her control. The courtroom collectively holds its breath. Judge Caprio is known for his mercy, but this seems to be building to something even beyond his usual compassion. However, the judge continues, and Victoria's face falls slightly at that word, I can't just dismiss these tickets entirely. That wouldn't be fair to all the other people in Providence who scrape together money to pay their parking violations even when it's difficult. What kind of message would that send? Victoria nods, understanding. I know, Your Honor. Whatever the court decides, I'll find a way to. Let me finish, Judge Caprio interrupts gently. Here's what we're going to do. The city of Providence has a community service program. People who can't afford to pay their fines can work them off by serving the community. Usually, it's things like cleaning up parks, helping at community centers, working at food banks. Are you familiar with this program? No, Victoria says. I had no idea that existed. Most people don't, the judge replies. But here's what I'm thinking. You run clothing stores, high-end boutiques. I imagine you have inventory that doesn't sell, past season items, things that are perfectly good but no longer marketable at full price. Yes? Victoria nods slowly, uncertain where this is going. Yes, we do. We usually sell them at steep discounts or donate them at the end of the fiscal year for the tax write-off. Judge Caprio's eyes light up with that particular spark they get when he's found a solution that serves multiple purposes. Here's my proposal. Instead of paying these fines in cash, I want you to donate clothing from your store's good clothing, mind you, not damaged or unusable items, to 3 organizations in Providence. The Women's Shelter on Broad Street, the job training center that helps people transitioning back from incarceration, and the Refugee Resettlement Center. These are people who need professional clothing for job interviews, for work, for building new lives. Your high-end boutique items could make a real difference for someone trying to get back on their feet. Victoria's mouth opens in surprise, and something like relief floods her features. I can do that. I have racks and racks of past season inventory. Suits, dresses, professional wear. It's all perfectly good, just not what's selling anymore. Excellent, Judge Caprio says, warming to his solution. Here's how we'll structure it. I'm going to value your donations at the wholesale cost of the items, not the retail price. For every $100 wholesale value you donate, we'll count that as $100 toward your fines. That seems fair. You'll need to provide receipts and documentation from each organization confirming what was donated and its approximate value. Does that sound manageable? More than manageable, Victoria says, and now she's crying again, but these are different tears of gratitude, of relief, of being seen and understood in a way she hasn't experienced in a very long time. Your Honor, I can have those donations ready within a week. I'll personally deliver them and make sure they have everything they need. But Judge Caprio isn't finished. There's one more thing, he says, and his expression softens even further. I'm also going to connect you with someone. Her name is Margaret DeLuca, and she runs a support group for family members of Alzheimer's patients. She also works with a legal aid organization that helps people navigate Medicare, Medicaid, and other resources for long-term care. I think you need to talk to her. Victoria looks stunned. I don't understand. Why would you do this for me? After how I acted when I came in here? Judge Caprio smiles, that warm, grandfatherly smile that has melted hearts across the internet. Because everybody deserves a second chance to show who they really are. And because your mother raised a good daughter, someone who visits every Sunday even when she's not recognized, someone who sacrifices her own well-being to care for others. That didn't come from nowhere. Your mother must be a remarkable woman, and she deserves to have her daughter get the support she needs to keep caring for her without destroying herself in the process. Judge Caprio reaches for his gavel, but before he brings it down to make his ruling official, he pauses one more time. There's something else he wants to say, something that goes beyond this particular case and this particular defendant. It's in these moments that his courtroom transcends the mundane business of parking tickets and municipal violations and becomes something more: a classroom in humanity, a testament to the power of compassion, a reminder of what justice can look like when it's tempered with mercy. Miss Ashford, he begins, his voice taking on that quality of gentle wisdom that comes from decades of listening to people's stories, before I enter my ruling, I want to make sure you understand something important. What happened here today, this wasn't about parking tickets. Not really. This was about two people having an honest conversation about life and struggle and the weight we all carry. Victoria stands at the podium, her earlier defensiveness completely dissolved, replaced by an openness and vulnerability that makes her look somehow both younger and more dignified than when she first walked in. When you came into this courtroom, the judge continues, you were wearing a mask. We all wear masks sometimes. We put on our business clothes, we style our hair, we carry our expensive bags, and we hope that if we look successful enough, maybe we can convince ourselves that we actually are successful, that we're not drowning, that we have it all under control. But the truth is, Ms. Ashford, real strength isn't about pretending you don't need help. Real strength is about having the courage to admit when you do. He glances out at the gallery, where people are watching with rapt attention, many of them wiping away their own tears. This goes for everyone in this room, everyone watching this proceeding. We live in a society that tells us we need to have it all together, that asking for help is weakness, that struggling means we've failed somehow. But that's not true. That's never been true. The strongest communities, the strongest families, the strongest individuals are the ones who understand that we're all connected, that we all need each other, that none of us can make it through this life alone. He turns his attention back to Victoria. You've been taking care of everyone else, your mother, your employees, your customers, but nobody's been taking care of you. And that needs to change. Not just because you deserve care, though you do, but because you can't keep giving from an empty cup. If you burn out completely, if you lose everything, then all those people depending on you lose too. So taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Victoria nods, absorbing every word like someone who's been starving for exactly this kind of guidance, this kind of permission to be human and imperfect and in need of support. Judge Caprio picks up his pen. So here's my official ruling. The 15 parking violations totaling $2,350 in fines and fees are hereby suspended pending the completion of community service in the form of clothing donations to the 3 organizations I mentioned. You'll work with the court clerk to get the contact information for each organization and the documentation requirements. Once those donations are completed and verified, these violations will be cleared from your record completely. He signs the order with a flourish and then looks up at her again. But I'm also going to require something else, and this is non-negotiable. I'm requiring you to contact Margaret DeLuca within the next 7 days and attend at least one support group meeting. This isn't punishment, Ms. Ashford. This is me, as someone who's been around a long time and seen a lot of people struggle, telling you that you need support. You need community. You need people who understand what you're going through with your mother. I'll call her today, Victoria promises, her voice steady now despite the tears still streaming down her face. I promise, Your Honor. Good, Judge Caprio says, satisfaction evident in his expression. And one more thing, and this is just advice from someone who's learned a few things in his 7 decades on this planet: be honest with your employees. Tell them what's happening with the business. You'd be surprised how people respond when you're genuine with them. Maybe they have ideas. Maybe they're willing to make sacrifices too. Maybe together you can figure out a way forward that you couldn't see on your own. But they can't help if they don't know the truth. Victoria wipes her eyes, and when she looks at Judge Caprio, there's something like wonder in her expression. How did you know? She asks quietly. How did you know that underneath all that attitude, I was just scared and overwhelmed? Judge Caprio smiles that warm smile again. Because I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've learned that most anger is just fear wearing a disguise. Most defensiveness is just vulnerability trying to protect itself. And most people who seem the hardest to reach are usually the ones who most desperately need someone to try. He leans back in his chair, the formal part of the proceeding complete but clearly not ready to let Victoria leave just yet. Can I tell you what I think is going to happen? I think you're going to go back to your stores today, and you're going to start having honest conversations with your staff. I think you're going to connect with Margaret and discover that there are resources you never knew existed to help with your mother's care. I think you're going to donate beautiful clothing to women and men who will wear it to job interviews and feel, maybe for the first time in a long time, like someone sees their worth and their potential. Victoria is nodding, hanging on every word. And I think, the judge continues, his voice growing even softer, that someday, maybe years from now, you're going to look back on this moment, on this day when you came into this courtroom wearing armor and left with your heart open, and you're going to realize that this was a turning point. Not because I dismissed some parking tickets, but because you finally let yourself be seen. Because you finally admitted you needed help. Because you finally understood that asking for support isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The courtroom erupts in spontaneous applause, something that rarely happens but feels entirely appropriate for this moment. Victoria covers her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking, and Judge Caprio waits patiently for the applause to die down before speaking again. Miss Ashford, you're free to go. But before you do, I want you to promise me something. Anything, she says. Promise me that the next time you're overwhelmed, the next time you feel like you're drowning, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that you don't have to face everything alone. You'll remember that asking for help is brave, not weak. Can you promise me that? I promise, Victoria says, and this time her voice is strong and clear. "And Your Honor, thank you. Not just for the ruling, but for seeing me. For caring enough to look past the person I was pretending to be to find the person I actually am." Judge Caprio's eyes glisten. "That's what we do here, Miss Ashford. That's what justice looks like when it remembers its humanity. Now go on. Go make those donations. Go call Margaret. Go talk to your employees. Go visit your mother on Sunday and tell her even if she doesn't remember how much you love her. Because even if her mind is fading, her heart still knows. Her heart still remembers love, even when everything else is gone." Victoria gathers her belongings, her expensive handbag no longer a symbol of false security but just a purse, her designer clothes no longer armor but just fabric. As she turns to leave, she pauses and looks back at Judge Caprio one more time. "Your Honor, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you do this? You could have just fined me and moved on to the next case. Why take the time to dig deeper, to care about what's really going on in people's lives?" Judge Caprio is quiet for a moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserves. Then he speaks, and his words carry the weight of a lifetime of service, of thousands of cases, of countless lives touched by his compassion. Because every person who walks into this courtroom is someone's son or daughter, someone's mother or father, someone's friend or neighbor. They're not just case numbers. They're human beings with stories and struggles and dreams that sometimes get derailed by circumstances beyond their control. And if I can do anything to help them get back on track, to feel seen and heard and valued, then I've done more than enforce the law. I've served justice in its truest form. I've reminded someone that they matter, that they're not alone, that there's still hope even when everything seems dark." He pauses, then adds with a gentle smile, "Besides, my parents didn't come to this country with nothing, work themselves to the bone, and sacrifice everything so their son could grow up to be someone who treats people like they're disposable. They taught me that everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves compassion. And I try to honor that lesson every single day I put on this robe." Victoria stands there for a moment, absorbing his words, and then she does something unexpected. She places her hand over her heart and gives him a small bow of respect, of gratitude, of recognition that she's been given something precious in this courtroom, not just a second chance with her parking tickets, but a second chance at approaching her life with honesty and openness and the courage to ask for help. As she walks out of the courtroom, her shoulders are straighter not with false confidence but with genuine hope. The doors close behind her, and Judge Caprio watches her go with satisfaction written across his weathered face. The clerk calls the next case, and the courtroom machinery continues its daily work. But everyone present knows they've witnessed something special, something that will be talked about long after they leave this building. They've seen what happens when justice remembers its humanity, when a judge sees past the surface to the struggle beneath, when mercy and accountability find their perfect balance. Judge Frank Caprio picks up the next case file, adjusts his glasses, and prepares to do it all over again because in Providence Municipal Court, every person who walks through those doors deserves the same thing Victoria Ashford received today, the chance to be truly seen, truly heard, and truly understood. That's not just justice. That's humanity at its finest. And that's what makes this courtroom, and this judge, so extraordinary. The voiceover fades as the camera lingers on Judge Caprio's face, that gentle, knowing expression that has made him beloved around the world, and the final message is clear: we all struggle. We all need help. And the bravest thing any of us can do is admit it.